During World War II, the Japanese military used to think that the Marines were all recruited from prisons and insane asylums. Turns out they weren't entirely wrong, especially when you hear what happened on Wake Island. Just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, 450 Marines, 70 Navy corpsmen, and over 1,200 civilian construction workers found themselves next in line. Wake Island, a tiny coral atoll in the middle of nowhere, was suddenly the front line. On December 8, 1941, 27 Japanese bombers hit the island, wiping out most of its air defenses before anyone could even get off the ground. It was clear they weren't coming to scare, they were coming to take it. So the Marines dug in. The construction workers volunteered to fight. Everyone grabbed whatever weapon they could. They had ancient artillery guns from the 1800s, a few Browning machine guns, and the last 4 operational Wildcat fighters. That was it. 3 days later, Japan sent a full naval detachment, 3 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 landing ships carrying hundreds of Japanese Marines. From a tactical perspective, Wake didn't stand a chance. But the Marines had a plan. They let the Japanese ships come closer than anyone thought was smart. Commander WWII held fire until they were at 4,000 yards point blank for Marine artillery. When the order finally came, the island exploded in return fire. Within 12 minutes, they sank the destroyer Hayate. Then one of the Marine pilots, Henry Hammerin Hank Elrod, dropped a 100-pound bomb straight onto a destroyer's depth charges, sinking the second Japanese ship in an explosion so violent it didn't seem real. Japan had attacked over 24 locations in the Pacific. Wake Island was the first time they lost ships. The Japanese retreated, humiliated and furious. They came back with everything: daily bombings, more troops, 2 aircraft carriers, reinforcements from Pearl Harbor. And by December 22nd, Wake's defenders were left with 2 planes, dwindling supplies, and no hope of backup. Washington had decided the island was a lost cause. The Marines didn't care. They held out as 900 Japanese special landing troops stormed the beaches. When the radios went down and no orders came, the Marines charged anyway. Bayonets fixed, civilians manned the guns. And for 11 hours straight, Wake Island became hell on earth. In the chaos, Marine aviators shot down 21 enemy planes, including the bomber pilot who had sunk the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. The Japanese lost over 600 men. The Americans lost 52 Marines and 70 civilians. And even then, they didn't surrender. What ended the defense wasn't defeat, it was confusion. Commander WWII, cut off from communication, came out of his bunker, saw Japanese flags scattered across the island, and assumed they had lost. They were good luck flags left behind by dead enemy soldiers. But by the time he realized it, it was too late. He'd ordered a surrender, and surrender to the Japanese in 1941 wasn't safe. Every surviving American civilian and soldier was stripped naked, tied together, and marched to the airstrip to be executed. They stood there for 2 days under machine guns until the Japanese admiral announced that the emperor had spared them, only because the world was watching. The story of Wake Island had become a global headline. In a dark time for America, this tiny band of Marines had given the country something it desperately needed: a reason to believe. They were shipped off to prison camps across Japan and China. One escaped and was protected by Chinese communist fighters, led by none other than Mao Zedong. Most survived, most came home, but not one forgot. In a reunion decades later, a Marine was asked what he thought of the Hollywood movie that got their story wrong. Without skipping a beat, he said, "Well, first of all, we didn't have a dog." That's the kind of person who fought on Wake. People who were outgunned, outnumbered, and completely abandoned, but still held the line and made sure the Japanese Navy felt the full force of the sleeping giant they had just awakened. So now you tell us, do you think Wake Island changed how the world saw America's fighting spirit? Drop a comment.